Hi everybody, good morning. This is Jean here, Jean Truelove from Truelove Quilts for You. I'm sitting at my desk, as you can see. I had been sewing a little bit, but this morning I'm going to be doing another gifting quilt show and tell, because it seemed that you enjoyed that. The ones that I have made in my lifetime, and I have gifted some quilts to people. And as my last video I was saying that so many of the quilts that I had sort of pulled up on my computer screen that from years ago, that I had taken a photograph after the fact, or not particularly with the person who I was giving it to. That was just more spontaneous. But I have some more quilts that I had gifted to people, and I have a little story or a small story of how that quilt came to be with that person. As you know, I feel strongly about gifting quilts nowadays, because a lot of people are not quilty people, which is fine, absolutely fine. That's why there are menus. That's what we always say, right? But the people that do appreciate your quilts, that's the beauty in making a quilt, because you're spending hours and hours, days and days creating something very special. So it has to be for a very special person. And these people that I was gifting my quilts to over the decades have been very special. One that is appearing right now, this blue quilt years ago, I think maybe I shared this maybe years and years ago. A friend of mine, Jackie, had wanted to had sort of commissioned me to make a quilt for her mother-in-law, who was very much into like Indian decor, very sort of boho chic, but very rich jewel colors, and gave me carte blanche as to what I would do. So again, I had used not a panel, but bits of a panel that I was putting together. Actually, I was looking at a lot of my panel quilts. They all look a lot alike, because you have a panel, you flesh it out, and that's what it is. But I believe this blue quilt that I have showing you here, I had taken some elements from this panel and had again fleshed it out and made this lovely quilt. And apparently her mother-in-law was absolutely beyond thrilled with it. So yeah, that was a quilt that was gifted. She purchased it from me for not what I would have sold it for, because I knew her mother. We have a dear friend, Harry. He's an old family friend, and Harry and his wife Molly made me as a surprise, I guess about 6 years ago, a beautiful dollhouse. They had made dollhouses and had furnished dollhouses for years. That's what they had done, and sold them. And he, unbeknownst to me, he made me a dollhouse, and that was pride of place in our old house, and then in the house that was lost in the flood, and now it's in our master bedroom right now, so I can admire my dollhouse. So I had said years ago to Harry, I'd love to make a quilt for Molly, and her favorite colors were black, pink, and purple. I'm thinking, okay. So I don't have a picture of Molly under her quilt. I did, and I cannot find it actually, but here is a picture, I did take it, of Molly's quilt that she absolutely loved. But then just, I guess about, well, it wasn't our older home, it wasn't our family home, so maybe 5 years ago or so, I thought Harry loved fishing, and so I thought, well, Harry needs a quilt. So here is a picture of the quilt that I was working on in our old sewing room, and then here is a picture of Harry under his quilt. He had sent me a picture of it a little while later, and he just loves it. So that's Harry and Molly's. They love their quilts, they really do. Oh, again, coming back to using panels, our son Elliot, number 5 son Elliot, he absolutely loves like an ocean theme paradise scene. And so I had found this this panel, or a couple of panels, that I fleshed out with blocks and borders, and that was again when I had my embroidery machine. So I embroidered that Taste of Paradise or something like that for Elliot. He really liked that quilt. And again, on the blue theme, it was very interesting. My friend Sarika, for their, I believe it was their 10th anniversary, she asked me, she sort of commissioned me to make a quilt for her husband, Andrew, and she wanted all of his favorite things. Hot dogs, Big Bang Theory, the Phillies, all sorts of different little emblems that I had gotten some little bits of fabric for, plus some embroidery with their name and pictures of themselves in their wedding. I don't know if you can see it. And then their 2 children, Andrew and Aiden. It was really sweet. And his favorite thing was muscle cars. And so this quilt here sort of I tried to embody everything that Andrew, it was special to Andrew. And oh boy, she said he just freaked out when she gave it to him as an anniversary present. That was really, really nice. I had made this quilt here, for whatever reason, it's sort of greens and blues and reds and burgundies, and it was nice. It was a nice quilt. I liked it, and I was going to list it in my shop, or maybe I did list it in my shop, and it didn't sell. I didn't have it, and I pulled it out for some reason. Folded it up and I had it here. Well, my friend Jen came along and she's like, oh, I love that quilt. It reminds me of cakes. And as you know, Jen is a baker. She was making wedding cakes at the time, all sorts of cakes. So I'm like, you can have it if you like it that much. So that is one, I believe I've gifted Jen about 9 or 10 quilts until she started sewing herself. I taught Jen how to quilt, actually. But that was one of the quilts that I gifted her because she said, I love that so much. And again, if somebody absolutely loves and loves and loves, adores, not the general public if they walk off the street, I won't give them a quilt. But if one of our friends shows that they really love a quilt, I'm like, yeah, sure, you can have it. Her granddaughter, Sophia, I guess I had made her a baby quilt, and it was worn to a rag, an absolute rag, because her mom, Amy, and our first son, Luke, had asked me when Sophia, which she's now 16, was born, if I could make her a crib set. And back then, I know now it's controversial, but we had crib bumpers. So I made Sophia this black and white toile. Amy's very, very elegant and very classic, and so I used this black and white toile, which was very popular back then, and made Sophia's entire bed set, a bed skirt, a little pillow, as you can see here. We didn't know what they were having, a little girl or a little boy, so it was sort of unisex at the time. The picture I have here of her crib, but I had made a black and white, sort of a patchwork with the toile, and was like a minky patchwork quilt, fairly large quilt for the crib. Well, Sophia used that quilt. It's now a rag. The fabric just completely disintegrated. It was a decent fabric. I think it was a Waverly fabric, but she used that for the first 12 years of her life, and it's disintegrated. So I don't have a picture of the quilt, but this was the bedding set, so you can imagine the quilt. That was lovely. She took that quilt, and it was sort of big. She asked me if I would make her another quilt. And so I did, and she sort of chose the fabric out of my fabric stash, and I did have some like princess fabrics, pinks and purples, and here's this quilt here. And she just loved it. I had taken a picture of it. Again, I sort of just wrapped it up and gave it to Sophia, this lovely pink and purple. But then you got a picture, Amy put it on Pinterest, of all of our little grandchildren, the younger grandchildren, under the quilt. That was really sweet. So the quilt lives on. I did gift, and I don't have a picture of it, I did gift our oldest grandson, Zach and Alex, their own green and blue quilts, because they really liked it. Again, out of like Minky. And that Alex is married and it goes everywhere with him. And Zach is, what, 28 years old, and he just loves this quilt. And I had wanted to do a French braid quilt. I had to follow a pattern. It was similar to the pattern. I don't know where my pattern is. But I had made this quilt. And I had asked Malia, our daughter, when we lived in our older home, if she wouldn't mind helping me photograph it out in my front yard. So there's a picture of Malia battling the wind. It was just so funny. She's like, I don't want to do this, Mom. And I'm like, come on, do it. We're one big happy family, right? Pretend you're happy helping me. So she's carrying this quilt out. I did snap a picture of her. But there's Malia battling the quilt and helping set it up. And then she was holding it, I believe she was holding it. And here's the quilt. Well, I put it in my shop. I listed it for sale in my shop. But very soon after, a friend of ours, Brenda, in our congregation, she was expressing interest. She was watching some of my videos, and this was about eight years ago when I first started, and she said, oh, I just love your quilts. I love them so much. And I'm like, oh, what's your favorite colors? Thinking she really was extolling about my quilts. And so she said, my favorite colors are pink and purple and blue. So guess what quilt that Brenda got? So I deleted it from my listings, and I wrapped it up and I gave it to Brenda Jill. And well, I don't have a picture of it because, again, I just gave it to her. I gave it to her at our Kingdom Hall out in the parking lot, and she was like, oh, I can't believe it. It's so beautiful. And somewhere around I do have a thank you note from Brenda Jill saying years later how much she loved that quilt. So that was it in all of its glory. But then this is about gifting, but I do have a few stories about the quilts that I have sold. I had sold in my Etsy shop, which is no longer. And this is one of the quilts that I was asked to create. Actually, it was sort of a custom quilt. I didn't do specific custom quilts because when I was starting out, I was burned very bad, very bad. Somebody tried to micromanage me. It was horrible, horrible, horrible. But this person had proven to be a fairly decent customer, and she said, would you make me a red, white, and blue quilt? Not necessarily patriotic, more like Americana homespun-y looking quilt. So I was quite pleased, and I thought, well, what's more Americana homespun-y than plaid and the log cabin block, which I don't love making. Didn't love making this quilt. And it was a large quilt. It was a queen size quilt. But she paid well for it, and she really loved it. And again, it was wonderful because she let the creative freedom to me. But her review, I was just looking at her review. This was April 1st, 2013. So it was 11 years ago. I have this quilt on a guest bed, and I love it. The quilt is so rich in detail and so well made. The quilt makes the room. Jean's quilts are true heirloom quality. I have several store-bought quilts around and can tell such a difference between them. I have become spoiled with Jean's quilts. Again, she was a repeat customer. I have placed an order for a quilt on my own bedroom, and I'm eagerly awaiting its arrival. But of course, I knew to be patient, as work of her quality is worth any wait. Ah, if you're eyeing one of Jean's quilts, don't be hesitant to buy, as you won't be disappointed. Isn't that a lovely review? I thought that was so nice. That was a super review that I had received. Not that I'm patting myself on my back, but I'm patting myself on the back. I have a picture here of, I think again I shared this with you guys, when our number 7 son Francois was getting married. He had chosen an outdoor venue close by with lovely white chairs, and it looked like a summer wedding, but it was actually on October 31st. And it was cold out, but the girls were all in pink strapless, pretty dresses, and Brianna was just so beautiful in a beautiful dress, but it was really cold. And I was thinking about it, I'm like, oh, our guests are sitting outside. Obviously, that was just for the short ceremony, and the reception was indoors at a lovely venue. So I thought last minute to bring some of the quilts, again, this was 10 years ago, and put them on the chairs, just sort of as like a welcome, you know, quilty thing. Well, I don't have a picture of it. Again, I didn't have a picture because obviously in a wedding you're running around, all sorts of things. But apparently during the ceremony, I think I bought about 12 quilts, quite decent sized quilts. Apparently all of the guests were wrapped up in my quilts, like up to here. They're like sharing the quilts along the things because I put them on either side of the aisle. That was funny. But I did quickly take a snap, or somebody took a snap. Even I forgot to do that. And these are the 2 snaps of the quilts that were in our son's wedding. That was very sweet. Not too long ago, again, Brianna, who just had her, well, who had Stella 2 years ago, for her bridal shower, I made a little quilt, and this was Stella's little quilt that I had made. And actually, I can't find the picture. I do believe I shared it with you. I had made this black and white quilt here, again for sale. It's a pattern, but it's just half square triangles, and I was really pleased with it because I'll try to make the image a little bit bigger, because I had done a beautiful feather free motion quilting feather stitching on this quilt. It was really very pretty. Beautiful black and white, like a script backing. It was nice quilt. Big quilt. I had listed it in my shop, and apparently Brianna was looking at my shop. Again, this is this is about 11 years ago. And she had commented, I love that quilt so much that you just listed. So her bridal shower was coming up. So guess what I did? I deactivated the listing, and I'm like, oh well, Brianne and friends, well, that makes that shower gift easy. So I wrapped it up, and I did have a picture, and I do believe I shared it with you a little while ago, of Brianna holding up the quilt. I can't find that picture, but that she pulled it out of the gift bag, and even though she knew I wasn't going to give it to her, but she knew what the quilt looked like on screen, they were very thrilled to have that quilt. That was nice. That was really nice, and everybody was oohing and ahhing over that. That made that all worthwhile, more than any money in the world that I could have gotten from selling it. That was lovely. Again, there was another sister in our congregation who had admired my quilts online, and I was out in the ministry work with her, and she and Eileen had said, I said, just sort of feeling her out. I didn't know her all that well, but lovely person. And we were going door to door in our ministry work, and I was sort of quizzing her, like, what are your favorite colors? You know, like not in quilt terminology, anything like that. So, oh, I love roses, and I love the color like aqua and yellows and pinks. I just think that lovely look. So I went home, put my thinking cap on, and one of my easiest quilt patterns, my 3-seam 10-minute quilt block, 5-minute quilt block. So I whipped one up for Eileen, and I gave that to her. Again, I don't have a picture of it because I gave it to her. I gave it to her at the Kingdom Hall out in the parking lot, all wrapped up in a gift bag, and she opened it up. She's like, oh, it's so pretty. But I did take a picture of that quilt. Anyway, I have so many more, but again, this video is going on. I'm so sorry, but I get carried away. I did have a lot of pictures, and it seems you guys really enjoyed me sharing these with you. And it's so nice to look back and reminisce about the lovely people that have expressed appreciation for a craft. And yeah, and I was happy to gift my quilts to them. They really appreciated it. I'm going to wrap this up because it's gone on a long time, but the one that made the most impression on me was I had made I think I shared this with you people before, several years ago. I had made a chevron quilt that was all sort of in vogue, sort of a rainbow color chevron quilt, and I listed it in my my Etsy shop, and it sold. I thought, okay, I wrapped it up real pretty, and when I shipped something out, I did it real pretty, beautiful tissue paper. I made it like a gift present. So the person, and I gave them quilt care instructions, the whole 9 yards. So people were very pleased. Well, I shipped the quilt out, end of subject. I got a nice review, beautiful quality quilt. Well, I guess about a year later, I received this photograph, and I received a note written to me, that this customer's daughter was undergoing treatment of some sort. She did not say what it was, and she was in hospital, and she had loved the quilt she had purchased it, and she had all of her friends, like a friendship quilt it's called, a signature quilt, sign the white of the chevron, as you can see here, with all of her friends' best wishes for her treatment in hospital. And she took a picture of her daughter in hospital under the quilt. That really touched me very much. That brought her a lot of comfort, and she had all of her well wishes and beautiful sentiments from all of her dear friends wrapped around her. That was a very special one, and I'm very proud of that I had something to do with that. That was lovely. I don't know what happened to the girl, if she's recovered. Hopefully she has, and she's still wrapped up in love. So anyway, thank you very much, folks. I have more, and I won't go on. Thank you so much for appreciating me, and when you do gift your quilts, it's just such an act of love. And there is more happiness in giving than in receiving. Most times, I like to get things too. All right, folks, have a lovely day. Take care. Love from the Trueloves. Bye-bye.